Hey there. Ready for like a cosmic show? We're gonna deep dive into a total lunar eclipse.
Ooh.
But not just any eclipse. This one's happening during the full moon that's known as the worm moon.
Crikes.
It's happening really soon, so we gotta get you prepped for all the action up there in the sky.
Well, what's really cool about this is that it shows how people throughout history have looked up at the sky and found meaning in these events.
You know, I've always been fascinated by those traditional moon names like the worm moon.
Yeah.
But I gotta admit, I don't know that much about like where they came from or what they tell us about different cultures
Oh, yeah.
and their relationship with the night sky.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Well, you've come to the right place because we're going to break all that down.
Okay.
Plus, we'll give you a rundown of what to actually expect during the eclipse and even some other cool sky watching tips for the whole month.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
Oh.
Okay, so first things first, let's talk about this eclipse.
Okay.
What exactly are we going to see on March 14th?
So picture this. The moon is going to move right through Earth's shadow, and it's going to be a pretty dramatic thing to see.
Uh-huh.
It all starts late on Thursday night, March 13th at 11:57 p.m. Eastern Time.
Oh, okay.
That's when the moon starts to go into the Earth's penumbra,
Okay.
which is the lighter outer part of the shadow.
So is that when things start to get interesting, like visually?
Exactly.
Okay.
But the real show starts when the moon enters the umbra.
Okay.
That's the darker inner part of the shadow. And that happens at 1:09 a.m. on Friday, March 14th.
Okay, so that's when we start to actually see a change.
Yes, a more noticeable change in the moon's appearance.
Oh, okay.
And then just a little over an hour later, at 2:26 a.m., the moon will be fully in the umbra.
Oh,
And that is the beginning of Totality, the main event.
Now this is where I need a little clarification.
Okay.
I know a total lunar eclipse doesn't mean the moon, like, vanishes, right?
Right.
It's more like it changes color.
You're absolutely right.
Oh.
Instead of disappearing completely, it takes on this really incredible reddish-brown color.
Okay, so why does that happen? Is it something to do with the Earth's atmosphere?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So think about all the sunrises and sunsets that are happening around the world at that moment.
Okay.
The light from those sunrises and sunsets is scattered and refracted through Earth's atmosphere
Right.
and projected onto the moon, giving it that reddish glow.
That's incredible. I've also heard this type of eclipse called a blood moon.
Yeah.
Is that another name for a total lunar eclipse, or is there something more to it?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The term blood moon, it can be a little bit confusing because it's used in a couple of different ways.
Okay.
Sometimes it just refers to any total lunar eclipse where the moon turns red.
Okay.
Other times it's used specifically for full moons that happen in the autumn.
Oh, okay. So it's not necessarily like a scientific term or like a nickname
Right.
that captures the visual drama of it.
Precisely.
Okay.
But now let's go back to the worm moon part
Yeah.
of this whole eclipse.
Yes.
You're curious about where these traditional moon names came from.
Yes. Definitely. It doesn't exactly sound like a typical astronomy term. I'm guessing it has more to do with what's happening down here on Earth
Yeah.
that time of year?
You're right on.
Okay.
Many of these full moon names, including the worm moon, have roots in Native American culture.
Okay.
Back in the 1930s, the Maine Farmer's Almanac started recording these names, and they've become pretty well known since then.
So what's the story behind the worm moon? Does it literally have something to do with worms?
It does.
Okay.
The name refers to the time of year when the ground begins to thaw
Right.
and earthworm casts start appearing on the surface.
Yeah.
It's a sign of spring's arrival in many regions.
Yeah. That makes sense for areas where the ground freezes in the winter. But I'm curious, does the worm moon name hold true everywhere? Were there always worms emerging in every part of North America at this time of year?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. It turns out that glaciers, thousands of years ago, wiped out the native earthworms in the northern parts of North America.
Oh, wow.
So even after the glaciers retreated, those regions remained worm-free until European and Asian earthworm species were introduced.
Huh. So the worm moon name might not be entirely accurate for those northern regions,
Yeah.
historically speaking. It really highlights how these names are tied to specific locations and ecological contexts.
Yeah, you've hit on a key point.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how these moon names, while they do capture the essence of a particular time of year,
Yeah.
don't always reflect the natural phenomena in a universal way.
Right. It makes you wonder if we need some updated moon names to reflect modern experiences.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I came across a suggestion for pothole moon.
Oh,
Yeah, that's something I can definitely relate to.
that's a fun one. It was actually my friend Tom Van Wagner who came up with that a few years back.
Okay.
It's certainly fitting for many of us.
Yeah.
Dealing with the aftermath of winter.
Tell me about it. Just last week, I hit a pothole so deep I thought I'd lost a tire.
Oh, no.
But potholes aside, what else can we look forward to seeing in the sky this month? Are there any other planets or celestial events we should be watching for?
Well, besides that worm moon eclipse, March is actually a really great month for sky watching overall. The evenings are going to be especially impressive with Jupiter and Mars shining brightly.
Oh, those are always fun to spot. No fancy telescopes needed, right? Just look up and there they are.
Exactly. They're some of the easiest planets to find. And for those early birds out there, Venus and Mercury will be moving into the morning sky later in the month.
So something for both the night owls and the early risers. Anything else we should be on the lookout for?
Uranus is still visible, though it is pretty faint. It was actually at its brightest back in mid-November, and unfortunately there are no major meteor showers or comets this month.
All right, so a quiet month on the meteor front, but it sounds like there's still plenty to see. Now, I know you've got your detailed sky watching calendar there. What are some of the highlights that we should mark on our own calendars?
Well, there are some celestial meetups happening that are worth noting. For example, on March 8th and 9th, you'll find Mars near the moon and the bright star Pollux.
Ooh, a triple play. That's gotta be a pretty sight.
Yeah.
I'm picturing a cosmic triangle up there.
Yeah, indeed. And then just a couple days later on March 11th and 12th, Regulus will be close to the almost full moon.
Regulus, that's the heart of the constellation Leo, right? The one that kind of looks like a backwards question mark?
That's the one. It's a blue-white star, so it should really stand out against the moon's glow.
Okay, I'm marking that down. So after all the excitement of the eclipse on the 14th, what's next on the skywatching agenda?
Well, on March 16th, Spica, the brightest star in Virgo, will be near the moon. And here's a really cool thing. In some parts of the world, there will even be an occultation,
Oh, wow.
where the moon actually passes in front of Spica, blocking it from view.
Whoa, an occultation. I've never seen one of those.
Yeah.
That's gotta be pretty rare.
It's not something that happens every day, that's for sure. Then on March 20th, Antares, the red supergent star in Scorpius, will be near the moon. And similar to Spica, there will be an occultation of Antares, but this time it'll be visible from Australia and New Zealand.
So a special treat for our friends down under. It's amazing how these events are visible in some parts of the world and not others.
Right.
It really makes you think about how our perspective of the sky changes depending on where we are.
Absolutely. It's all about perspective, both in terms of location and time. Speaking of perspective, there's one more event I want to highlight that really plays with our perception of the planets. On March 30th, Mars will pass by Pollux for the third time in 6 months.
Wait, 3 times? I thought planets moved in like a pretty consistent path across the sky. How does that work?
So what we're seeing there is something called retrograde motion. Planets don't always appear to move in a straight line across the sky from our perspective here on Earth. Sometimes it looks like they're moving backwards for a while.
Okay, so I'm imagining the planets doing a sort of cosmic moonwalk. But seriously, what causes this apparent backwards motion?
It's all about relative speed
Yeah.
and our position in space. Basically, Earth and Mars are both orbiting the sun, but at different speeds. So as Earth overtakes Mars in our orbit, it can create the illusion that Mars is moving backwards for a bit.
So it's like when you're passing a slower car on the highway. For a moment, it looks like the other car is moving backward, even though it's still going forward.
That's a great analogy. And this 3-time pass by Pollux is a great way to visualize this whole phenomenon.
A cosmic dance! I love
Yeah.
it! Now I'm already looking forward to April. Any early sneak peeks at what we can expect to see next month?
Of course. April begins with a lovely view on the 1st. The Pleiades star cluster will be near the crescent moon.
Ah, the Pleiades, also known as the Seven Sisters, one of my favorite star clusters.
A classic. And then on April 2nd, Jupiter will be near that crescent moon.
So lots of moon and star action in early April. Anything else to add to our list?
For those who like to get up early and see the sunrise on April 10th, Mercury and Saturn will have a close encounter in the morning sky.
A planetary rendezvous before sunrise. Okay, I'm adding that to my calendar right now.
And finally, on April 12th, Spica will once again be very close to the moon, this time a full moon.
Wow, it sounds like March and April are going to be amazing months for sky watching. So much to see and enjoy. I don't know about you, but I'm already feeling inspired to bundle up, grab my binoculars, and spend some time under the stars.
Yeah, it really is amazing how these events can connect us to something so much bigger than ourselves.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned connection. As we've been talking about these moon names and these upcoming sky watching events, it really makes you realize that people across different cultures and throughout history have looked up at the same sky and have found their own ways to understand and interpret it.
It's like we all share a universal language. No matter where you are in the world, we can all look up and see the same moon. But the stories that we tell about it, the names that we give it, those things reflect our own unique perspectives and traditions.
Right.
For example, that worm moon. It shows how the lunar cycles were really tied in with agricultural practices in some cultures. Just imagine those early farmers using the moon's phases to predict when to plant their crops.
That's so cool.
It reminds us of how closely humans once lived in tune with the natural world.
That's such a good point. It's not just about the science of the event itself. It's about how it fits into our cultural understanding of the world around us.
Exactly. And that leads me to a thought that I want to leave our listeners with today. As you're out there enjoying this worm moon eclipse, or any other celestial event for that matter, just take a moment and think about this. Does your local area or your community have its own special names for the moon's phases? Perhaps there's a hidden layer of sky lore right in your own backyard just waiting to be uncovered.
That's a great question. It might even spark some interesting conversations with your family and friends, or lead to some cool research projects. Who knows? Maybe you'll even be inspired to come up with your own new moon names, just like Tom did with the pothole moon.
Now, that would be something.
Yeah.
Just remember, the sky is full of stories just waiting to be told. So keep looking up and keep those questions coming.
Well said. Until next time, happy sky watching.